Here's a foolproof recipe to get dementia in the later years of your life. Do as many of these things as possible every day for many decades. Number one, eat a high sugar diet. Number two, eat a highly refined carbohydrates diet. Number three, eat a lot of seed oils and foods treated with seed oils. Number four, drink alcohol every day. Number five, smoke. Number six, be sedentary. Number seven, be subjected to chronic mental and physical stress. Number eight, have poor sleep. Number nine, be exposed to lots of toxins. For example, pollution, pesticides, chemicals, etc. And finally, number 10, probably the most controversial, take statin medications and maybe other medications too. I'm pretty sure that many of you are probably rolling their eyes right now thinking, oh my God, please, we all live like this. What am I supposed to do? Should I abandon all pleasures of life and live like a monk? Just let me enjoy my life and drop dead at a certain point. Who cares? Or something along those lines. Well, this is the classic reaction that I get. And frankly, it was my reaction too before I started my own health journey and I understood many things. Now, here's the deep flaw in that kind of thinking. The fact is that those 10 factors that I listed earlier cause damage very slowly throughout years and decades. And during those years and decades, you will develop conditions and issues that will greatly diminish your quality of life. At a certain point, if you are lucky and you don't get a devastating cancer or stroke, then you will probably survive a little longer. You will suffer for longer and you will make all the people around you suffer with you. So, on one side, you're thinking that you want to enjoy life by engaging in all the modern, destructive activities and habits. And on the other side, you're actually suffering and living a miserable life because of those things. It's completely nuts. Unfortunately, our modern way of living exposes our body to too many destructive factors all at once for many years, and our body will eventually be outmatched. It's basically a race between the speed of the damage that we are inflicting to our body and the ability of our body to repair itself. Let's try to visualize this. And let's use my mom's example. Let's see how she fared on all these factors throughout her life. Remember that my mom started showing signs of cognitive decline in her mid 80s. And then she was diagnosed with dementia basically when she turned 90. Okay, this table represents basically my mom's life. At the top, you can see the 9 decades of her life. So let's see how she did on all those 10 factors. Now, obviously, this is my approximation. I don't have all the data. It's just my guesswork knowing her life. Number one, high sugar. Let me comment first on the color coding. Green means that the problem didn't exist. Yellow means low consumption. Orange means medium, moderate consumption. And red means high consumption. So, in my estimation, in the first 20 years of her life, it was the 1930s and 40s, she didn't have a very high sugar diet. Then, as the decades progressed, she started eating more sugar until it reached the 1970s. It was the boom of sugar, and she started consuming a lot of those, including fruit. Number two, refined carbohydrates. I would say that refined carbohydrates were always present, but maybe in the first 10 years of her life, not so much in big quantities. And then I would guess that the second part of her life, it was always present. Number three, seed oils. The first part of her life, not so much. But then from the 1960s, 70s, seed oils really picked up. And my mom liked fried food very much. Also, the 1970s and 80s were years in which they promoted the seed oils like a healthy alternative. Number four, alcohol. She never drank alcohol, so full green here. Number five, smoke. She never smoked really. There was a small, a short period of her life in the 70s and 90s, 80s and 90s in which she just followed the masses, but not so much. It was very, very light smoking. Sedentary, she was never a sedentary person, always walked a lot. Even today at 90, she walks a lot. Stress, I cannot really say about this in her early years, so it's either unknown or okay. But then throughout the years, she experienced some stress, and right now, with her condition, she's very, very stressed. Sleep, I cannot really say. I just know that in the past few years, not very good sleep. Toxins, I'm not sure at the beginning of her life, but from the 1970s, she has been exposed to all the toxins that we have been exposed with pollution and chemicals and all that stuff in food and environment. And then medications, I would say for the most part of her life, she did not take any medications. And then in the later years, she started taking blood pressure medications. And then in her mid 80s or early 80s, statins, which in my opinion caused the decline. Now, as a comparison, let's take a look at a person who is starting their 60s right now in the 2020s. Obviously, this is total speculation. But because they were born in the 60s, then probably they were exposed to more stuff. For example, high sugar. They were born in a high sugar environment. Probably in the first 10 years of their life, low consumption, but then it started picking up from the 1970s and then onwards. Very high sugar diets. On the high refined carbohydrates, same thing. Probably low consumption in the first 10 years of their life. Seed oils, maybe not so much in the first 10 years of their life, but then surely with all the packaged foods, the ultra processed foods, fast foods, and the boom from the 70s, it picked up. Alcohol, maybe in the first 20 years, nothing. And then maybe in the 20s, abusing a little bit. And then in the next decades, moderate daily consumption of alcohol. Smoke, big thing in the 70s and 80s. So let's assume that this person started smoking in their teens and then kept on going. Probably a sedentary lifestyle, normal stress of the modern life, entering the workforce, and then getting a family and getting stressed. Sleep, maybe decent sleep in the early years, but then getting worse and worse. Toxins, let's assume that from the 60s, everybody has been exposed to some degree of toxins and pollution. And finally, medications, probably the first 30 years, pretty safe, and then some medications, and then eventually statins in their 50s. Now, a person like this probably has developed already in their 50s type 2 diabetes or even earlier. This person is probably severely overweight or obese, high blood pressure, probably already had a stroke. And for sure, they are taking a lot of medications to deal with all the pain and all the issues that they got from this lifestyle. Are you really, really surprised that a modern individual that was exposed to all of this throughout all these decades will develop eventually some kind of chronic disease? It's obvious. If this person survives a stroke or a cancer or some other of those chronic diseases, then they will get dementia for sure. And not in their 80s or 90s, but they will probably get it in their 60s or 70s. Now, just for the sake of it, let's compare my mom's life with this prototypical 60 years old. The first part of my mom's life was basically a good life. She didn't do a lot of damage because until the 1960s or 70s, it was pretty safe. And then she didn't have some of the destructive habits like alcohol or being sedentary and stuff like that. So she fared pretty well. In fact, she got to her mid 80s in incredible physical condition and in pretty good mental condition. She was doing some damage for sure, but there was something, like statins, for example, that really accelerated her decline and ruined everything. But look at this prototypical 60 years old. They started their life in the 60s. So the boom of all the ultra processed foods, the seed oils, the sugar, and they got all of it. I think that visualizing your life like this might help you put things in perspective. Those things are not the pleasures of life. Those things are vices. And by looking at this prototypical 60 years old, do you really think that medications alone can fix all the damage that has been done throughout all those decades? Especially if you don't stop making that damage. It's impossible. And if you get one of the modern chronic diseases, you can't really be surprised. You can't. This is why. This is why you're getting that disease. Pretty depressing, huh? Well, I think you just need to realize that you are attached to habits, to self destructive habits. And you're thinking that those are normal, that having a high sugar diet, high refined carbohydrates diet, drinking alcohol every day, smoking cigarettes, eating foods deep fried in inflammatory seed oils, eating all the packaged ultra processed foods, etc., etc. That is not normal. We made it normal. We have been living in a world that made that stuff normal. It is not normal. Our normal way of life would be to be in nature, eating whole, natural, nutrient dense foods, animal foods, plants, whatever. Not this stuff. Our organism, our body is not designed to sustain that kind of lifestyle. That's it. But don't despair. It is absolutely possible to change. You cannot change everything from one day to the other. You cannot just say, as we usually do, like when we go on a diet, from tomorrow, diet. No, that approach doesn't work. You cannot change all these habits in one day. You need to take a step by step approach. For each of all those 10 factors, and there might be more, these are my 10, you need to understand where you are, where you need to be, and then develop a plan to get there step by step. Slowly, there is no rush, or there might be rush for some of you, depending on the level of damage that you have done. I think the how to do that might be a good topic for another video. Hope this one was useful for you. Maybe try to visualize the past decades of your life with that color coding in that table and see how you fare. All right, until the next video. Bye now.